Trade-based money laundering is the fentanyl crisis. Sources expose Chinese, Mexican, Canadian crime convergence. The famous picture of Trudeau at a Vancouver diner with all those Chinese guys, they're all in there. So this is the Bureau, of course, is what's his name? Scooper Cooper.
Sam Cooper, yeah.
Sam Cooper. I subscribe to this. It's worth subscribing to. It's a little pricey, but there's a lot of, great content in there. As the debate rages over President Donald Trump's disruptive tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China, whether they represent a genuine war on fentanyl deaths tied to each nation's role in the deadly supply chain or merely a pretext for U.S. trade dominance, multiple Canadian and U.S. government sources have stepped forward to highlight a factor they believe North American citizens aren't grasping amid Trump's political rhetoric. They point to the staggering scale and sophistication of trade-based money laundering orchestrated by Chinese triads in Canada and Mexican cartels. This is a predominant concern in Canada, alongside revelations of so-called fentanyl super labs hidden in rural areas, yet easily supplied by Canadian transportation hubs, shipping, rail, and trucking networks saturated with organized crime. These sources insist this little understood form of criminal money laundering not only fuels fentanyl trafficking, ultimately linked to a complicit Beijing, but directly finances drug shipments initiated by Chinese networks in Toronto and Vancouver, sending fentanyl, methamphetamine, and cocaine across the Mexican border into California, specifically to trucking hubs around Los Angeles. According to the primary source, a Canadian expert familiar with what they classify as an intricate trilateral partnership between Chinese triads, the Chinese Communist Party's United Front foreign influence networks, and Latin American cartels. In 2023, Canada's financial watchdog FinTrack reported that Chinese networks had evolved beyond traditional casino-based laundering methods in Vancouver and Toronto, now mastering laundering through Canadian banks, law offices, real estate, and the diaspora-based fraud networks. Yet, according to the Bureau's criminal intelligence source, these same networks, operating alongside the Sinaloa cartel, also traffic in a range of commodities, from poached wildlife and agricultural staples like avocados and limes to rare Chinese delicacies such as geoduck, a phallic-shaped clam prized in hot pot and believed to have aphrodisiac properties. Let's go down a little bit. The same individuals notorious in elite Canadian enforcement circles appeared in suspicious transaction reports and were central to a sweeping intelligence investigation into vulnerabilities in Canada's banking system. This investigation, known as Project Athena, was a major anti-gang initiative examining reports from Canada's financial intelligence agency, FinTrack. Project Athena emerged after the collapse of its predecessor case, E-Pirate, reportedly Canada's largest ever drug money laundering probe, which targeted Chinese underground bankers in Vancouver and Toronto, linked to the Sam Gore network, a Chinese syndicate dominated by the 14K Big Circle and Sun Yi on triads. The famous picture of Trudeau at the Vancouver diner with all those Chinese guys, the ones we all know from various media reports, they're all in there. They're all in there moving money around, the source said. And this was just one money service bureau, nearly $1 billion in 3 years. So how many others are there? Let's go down to the bottom a little bit here. And so they start taking over industries. That's why your price of limes is what it is today, because the cartels have cornered the market, trying to put those drug proceeds somewhere. So let's start buying up commodities and controlling sectors. And that's what this case was. It confirmed everything we had received and heard from the FBI and DEA in bulletins for many years. The source added that while this particular cache of communications involved methamphetamine and cocaine, referred to as glass, and girls in coded narco communications, it did not directly pertain to fentanyl. However, the triad operator and the Mexican cartel associate appeared to broach the subject, at which point the cartel operative redirected the Canada-based triad to another handler in Mexico. The cartel guy he was speaking with on this particular phone was the one handling coke and meth, the source said. So it's like, hey, I'm interested in this and I don't deal with that. That's my associate. You'll have to go through someone else. They segment it. It's just such a tapestry. So there's that picture with Trudeau and all the drug dealers. Probably not drug dealers, but you know what I mean. Disclosing the stunning connection and scale of triad influence on Canada's west coast, the source said the underling, whose device was seized, revealing hundreds of money laundering and drug transaction deals between the triad and a Mexican cartel, was working for one of the targets in the e-pirate investigation. So in this case, when Chinese pilots were released from jail, the individual who arrived to collect them was an underling of the e-pirate underground banking boss, a major figure in Chinese organized crime in North America. This individual is also said to be responsible for the large-scale export of luxury vehicles from Vancouver to China. We found out that a $100,000 Mercedes here in Vancouver is worth between 3 and 5 times that overseas. So there's your money laundering right there. Let's go down.
Cash in the system, man. Isn't that interesting?
It's crazy. This could explain why following is unexpected. So this is about Trump winning. So let's go up a bit. So this expert aligned with Canadian federal law enforcement officials who point to highly sophisticated trade-based money laundering schemes linking Mexican cartels and Chinese triad networks operating in Vancouver and Toronto. These networks, the U.S. expert explained, facilitate the cross-border flow of meth, cocaine, and fentanyl using multi-commodity trade-based money laundering transactions to disguise their profits. They suggested that Canada either lacks a full understanding of the issue or is failing to take U.S. concerns seriously by not adopting a more forthright stance, particularly in assessing the scale of money laundering linked to illicit drugs and organized crime. They believe Canada is ultimately undermining its own interests. Meanwhile, U.S. authorities, they asserted, have a clearer and more comprehensive picture of the problem. This could explain why, following his unexpected victory in the November 2024 election, President Donald Trump swiftly threatened tariffs on Canada and Mexico, a move that puzzled and stunned most observers. 2 Canadian sources suggested the decision was influenced, at least in part, by a bipartisan congressional report on fentanyl released in December. The congressional working group behind the report spent months expanding on the Select Committee's bipartisan investigation, which for the first time documented how the Chinese Communist Party directly subsidizes the production of fentanyl precursors and analogs.
Let's go. We should go download that report and let's go over one day. Because I tried. I lost Naya Fannerstill's report. She had an ex post. Now her account's gone, and she had a report from 2023 on this whole thing. It was some organization that did an analysis, and I'm trying to find it.
So let's finish this up here. President Trump's address this evening laid bare a cynical and profoundly dangerous approach to America's global leadership. Shaheen said his 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada, our closest trading partners, threaten to unravel decades of economic cooperation and will inevitably result in economic consequences for American workers and businesses. But a Canadian expert dismissed Canada's efforts as insufficient. If you really want to do something lasting here, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm pro-Trump in that sense, but you'd have to have a leader in this country willing to crack open the charter and the criminal code and make radical changes, the expert said. Oof. This is stuff Canada should have addressed 25 years ago. But through successive liberal governments, we've allowed it to continue, and now we're caught with our pants down. If we think we can just start throwing numbers at this and that'll fix it, that's a mistake, the expert continued. The problem is the framework in Canada has made this attractive. The police know what's going on, but they don't have the tools to prosecute and disincentivize this. Trump knows this. Imagine it from his perspective. He's surrounded by weaklings exploiting and killing Americans. He's not wrong. Underscoring the paralysis of Canada's federal police under the current legal framework, the source reiterated that a broken prosecutorial system not only fails to secure charges against entrenched Chinese and Mexican criminal networks, but refuses to even consider cases. This is what happens when you've got such a decayed system, whether it's the Charter of Rights, the criminal code, the prosecution services, or just the broader demoralization of policing, which we played clips about on this show, compounded by chronic resourcing issues for years. The primary source for this story said, they just go for the easy stuff. Anything complex, they don't touch it. I don't think they've tackled a serious file since the e-pirate case collapsed. The prosecution service basically said, look, we're dealing with the same resourcing issues. Don't send us these complex files. We can't handle anything with more than 3 names listed in your report.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, I want to show you what's happening to this. Can I just break in here and give you like the
Yeah, that
results?
was the end of that. I'll probably leave it at that for
The
this.
results of all this, right? Get this. 67 overdoses in Saskatoon in 72 hours. Small town, rural Canada. Imagine the drain on an already overwhelmed healthcare system. But hey, Eastern liberals keep reassuring us that Canada isn't broken. Elbows up, everyone, and worry about Trump because that's the real problem. That's how many overdoses are happening. 60 some overdoses in Saskatoon in the last week. You don't hear much of that in the national news. Nothing to see here. This is from March. Like, this is recently. That one was from March 13th, March 8th. Another one here. Liberals will tell you fentanyl isn't an issue in Canada. Overdoses are up how many percent, do you think?
1,200.
400% since 2024. And since 2024 in Saskatchewan's largest city. 400%. Saskatchewan has a population of, wow, that's more than I thought. What? 352,000? I thought it was like 200,000.